What's going on, guys, and welcome back to #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, March 11th, 2020. This is episode 328. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. First and foremost, thank you so much for sending in as many questions as you did. Usually I would see 4 pages worth of questions and be like, holy shit, this is going to take me an hour and a half to 2 hours to get through because I hate skimming through questions if I don't have to. But this week was the exception. Thankfully, it's working a bit differently this week as I laid out in the questions, like on Twitter this past week, or rather yesterday, as well as in last week's video, because I will not be here next Wednesday, at least not until late Wednesday night. I'll be away in California starting this Friday, and I'm not canceling my trip because of the coronavirus. I'll talk more about that on today's episode. We get a lot of questions about that. Not about my trip being canceled, but specifically WrestleMania. So I will not be here until late next week, until like Thursday. I could have waited to record it late next week, but what's the fun in that? Why not knock out 2 episodes in one by gathering all of your questions? Because usually you guys send in a lot of questions anyway, and this week more so than usual, but it worked out perfectly because I was able to split up the questions from into 2 different episodes. After I'm done recording this show, I'm recording the second show that will go up next Wednesday. I'm not sure what time. I will be 3 hours behind, so I may not be up until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But usually that's par for the course with the show anyway every Wednesday, so nothing out of the ordinary there. But nonetheless, thank you guys for sending in all those questions. We are not missing an episode this coming week. So we got an episode today, then episode 329 will be up next Wednesday. I'm not even gone. So if you don't hear your question answered on today's show, is the bottom line, it will be answered in next week's show. So don't be worried that I skipped it or whatever. There are some questions that I do not include because I answer so many questions each week that we do get a lot of repeats. Sometimes I answer the repeats, sometimes I don't. So if you don't hear your question on today's show, because I know some people sent in many of them, which is great, it'll very likely be answered in next week's episode. So with all that being said, let's get right into it right now. First, starting from Emmanuel A. on YouTube. And real quickly, I should mention this. If you want to send in a question to the show, I don't know how I didn't mention this. You can tweet me on the Twitter machine with your question at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So now let's get started. First, from Emmanuel A. from YouTube, his first question was, I'll confess, I haven't seen an episode of Raw or SmackDown in months, ever since my family let our Hulu subscription run out, which has been making me feel more detached as a fan. I'm at the following storylines through review columns and social media reactions stage of the fandom right now. I watch NXT on the network at least, but everything else WWE I don't really care for. Like when I saw that Goldberg beat The Fiend and Roman Reigns got a WrestleMania title match just by confronting Goldberg, I just chuckled, and of course they did that type of way. I guess what I'm trying to say is WWE worth getting worked up over? Because as someone who used to be or get as heated over their booking, as someone who used to get heated over their booking, I just see things as WWE being WWE. That's a good question. I mean, it depends what it is, to be honest with you. For example, the Goldberg thing, I think every fan had a right to be upset over because that was just fucking dumb. Was that WWE being WWE? Absolutely. Nothing surprises me anymore. I am slightly stunned by some of the stuff that they do. Baffled might be the right word. But at the end of the day, they've done so much dumb things over the past, their entire existence, but more so recently than ever before, that I can't say I'm shocked, to be honest. When you really think about it, is anything really out of the ordinary anymore with WWE? Some things are cool, like cool surprises in a good way, that type of thing. But that being said, though, with Goldberg beating The Fiend, I said well in advance. Not that Goldberg was beating The Fiend. I didn't predict it. That wasn't my prediction. I did get the sinking feeling, though, that there was a very good chance they could have Goldberg beat The Fiend. It wasn't impossible. Chris Benoit coming back from the fucking dead is impossible. Goldberg beating The Fiend for the Universal Championship is not, astronomically impossible. That could have happened. It did happen. It pissed me off. I got over it the next day. I mean, it depends. Alexis, for example, is a big Bray Wyatt fan. She has no desire to watch SmackDown right now. Zero. I'm not really sure if that kind of falls into your category. You didn't stop watching because you were angry at a decision they made. You just stopped watching because you can't, with the Hulu subscription running out. But you're not missing much. I think Raw's a lot better than SmackDown. That really kind of goes without saying nowadays. I'm glad you're keeping up with NXT. You were obviously at AEW Revolution 2 weeks ago, which is cool. But yeah, it depends what it is. Like the Goldberg thing, I think people were upset, were rightful, were justified in getting upset over. I got over it the next day. I think it's fucking dumb, but I'll still watch the shows. And it's not a case of, oh, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Shut the fuck up with that bullshit. Not that I get that a lot anyway, because I do this as a job. But not just that, but like, I mean, that's the problem. People do stop watching. That argument is so invalid because there's a lot of fans I do know, including yourself, though for different reasons, that aren't watching anymore. They're not the ones that say, oh, I'm gonna stop watching. I'm going to announce my departure from the IWC. Like, no one gives a fuck. Those are the people that don't announce that they're going to stop watching wrestling, that the other fans in WWE should be concerned about because they're losing those viewers, if that makes sense. The Elimination Chamber show, listen, I thought it was a good show. I enjoyed it for what it was. It well exceeded my expectations. Is it a show you should go back and watch? Someone DM'd me that the other day. Oh, I missed the show. I was at work. Should I watch it? No, you can't. Or not that you can't, but like, no, you shouldn't. It wasn't that good of a show. I'm just saying watching it live, which I don't really do for most pay-per-views nowadays. I think I usually watch either on a delay or just like the next day. The big four pay-per-views are usually the ones, and a lot of that has to do with Alexis, and I like to watch it with her, and she's usually busy when these other shows are on. We watched the Rumble live, Survivor Series live, SummerSlam. We didn't watch, I watched Crown Jewel on delay. I watched Super Showdown on delay. I watched TLC the next day. I watched Clash of Champions the next day. I watched Hell in a Cell the next day. The summer pay-per-views, I think we watched Stomping Grounds and Extreme Rules live. But other than that, we usually watch the pay-per-views the next day or later on Sunday, just because we don't really feel like we're missing much. If we didn't watch Elimination Chamber, I would not have felt like I missed anything. I didn't miss anything at all because it was that skippable of a show. Nothing really happened. Oh, Sami Zayn won the Intercontinental Championship. Cool. I thought that was a great moment. But other than that, it really wasn't that monumental of a show. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the show was fucking terrible. It was awful. If you thought so, that's your prerogative. I really didn't mind the show. I don't really think it's worth ranting for 6 hours over, just because, of course, we knew that going in. It wasn't that bad of a show, first of all. Second of all, we already knew it was going to be a bad show. It's like spending an entire day ranting about how Super Showdown sucked. We knew it was going to suck. The Bray Wyatt thing was kind of unexpected a little bit. But other than that, the Super Showdown itself being uneventful really is nothing new. We all expected that. It was exactly what we thought it would be. Whatever. Is it worth getting worked up over? To an extent, yes, it depends what happens. For the dumb stuff that they do, like the Ricochet burial, it's disgusting to see a talent like him get wasted as much as he has lately. But it's nothing I'll lose sleep over, let's put it that way. But that's just me. It differs for everybody. Emmanuel's second question, and I should mention this too, I added all like the time-sensitive questions. So like Emmanuel's next question had to do with Revolution from last week. That's more time-sensitive than someone asking me about WrestleMania, for example. So I pushed all the evergreen questions I can answer next week to next week. So just to clarify that. This was kind of more time-sensitive, which is why I'm answering it on this episode. But his second question was, regarding the Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Adam Page match at Revolution, I think from a storyline standpoint, the Buckshot Lariat ended the match to give Page's character catharsis, the guy with the most involved arc winning with his move. As for a kayfabe standpoint, as in how a regular buckshot over everything else in the match, my take on it would be that fatigue had set in and Matt Jackson was already going to lose to Page's one-winged angel, so it's more a matter of an accumulative damage. The issue, admittedly, is that accumulative damage doesn't really get emphasized in matches, especially in the fast-paced modern era, where the only non-finisher move to end matches on a consistent basis is a roll-up. I feel like it's easier to use the video games as an example, where when you get red body damage, you're scared to take any moves, because you know at that point your wrestler can't kick out of anything anymore. Then to reference an actual match from the past decade or two, Does that make sense? Yeah, no, it makes sense. I get it. Like, he had taken the combo move, and then, that damaged him enough to be able to fall to just one buckshot lariat. Yes, that was the reason why he won. I get it from a storyline standpoint. I don't have a major issue with that. I wasn't saying that ruined the match at all. It was still an amazing match. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it was the greatest tag team match I've ever seen. I wouldn't echo Dave Meltzer's thoughts in that respect. I thought that was a little extreme, but, everyone has their own opinion. Nonetheless, though, I get what you're saying. The issue to me is that, it was a case of fatigue setting in. The fact that you had to explain it to me is not good, though. It should be very clear-cut as to why that ended the match and not the buckshot lariat, the knee combo that Kenny Omega does, that they do together. You shouldn't really have to explain it. It should be very obvious, like, oh, that was the reason why that ended the match. The Adam Page thing, I kind of get that he won with his move, and he didn't win with anyone else's move. And he probably would have won with the one-winged angel if, I think, Matt Jackson got hit with that. I don't remember which Buck got hit with it, but the other Buck came in and broke up the pinfall attempts. So he probably would have won with that had it not been broken up. That being said, though, the combo finisher should be devastating enough to put him out the first time. It shouldn't even have to get to the point where he has to hit his own move. Just that's not nearly as devastating to put him away. I just don't like all the kickouts. And in the right type of match in the year, it wasn't really that big of a deal. Again, it didn't bother me that much. I just thought it was a little weird. Overall, though, I thought it was it was a great match. I get the storytelling that they were doing the match. I get, the in-ring action was amazing, and I get all of that. I really do. I thought it was an amazing match. But that combo finisher should be devastating enough to put him out. Because when you have just like a single move, like we've seen that it's not an AEW problem. I see this all the time in WWE and Ring of Honor, really every company. Not every match, but it happens a lot. Where like you think to yourself, wow, that should have ended the match. So then when they hit another move that ends the match and you're like, that's it? That's what ended the match? You're kind of like taken aback a little bit. So again, that's merely nitpicking, and I get what they were going for. I understand what they were going for. Admittedly, though, I would have rather they just ended it with the buckshot lariat combo, or even at the one-winged angel, although I get what they were going for with what they did. I just don't really think it was necessary. They kind of dragged it on a little longer than they needed to, but it was still a great match. FD from Facebook, their first question was, if you haven't heard, Stardom, one of the premier female-only wrestling organizations from Japan, recently aired their latest live show, their show live from an empty Corrigan Arena in the midst of the whole worry about the coronavirus situation. Do you see any of the major American wrestling companies like WWE, AEW, NWA, or Impact having their own show live from empty arenas if the worry about the coronavirus is still there? I don't think so. I mean, Impact doesn't really have to worry about that. They've been planning for this for years, if their recent empty arenas are any indication. Ring of Honor, too. But I joke. WWE would be a bigger problem because a lot of their shows are, that fucking crowd in Philly on Sunday, it might as well have been an empty arena. That's how dead that crowd was. And I know it wasn't the hottest show, but like they should have been hotter for Bryan and Gulak and some of the other matches on that show and some of the other moments. It's really not that big of a deal. But anyway. No, I don't see WWE doing that. I see, unless they're absolutely told that they can't run a show in a certain city, I see them either moving the show or doing it elsewhere. I do not see them outright canceling an episode of Raw. They did that a couple of years ago. That one time, it was actually supposed to be here in Connecticut. They were supposed to run an episode of Raw the night after the Rumble. We had a really bad snowstorm, like really, really, really bad, because that was supposed to go to SmackDown that Thursday with my friend, or that Tuesday. We were supposed to go to a SmackDown taping with my roommate at the time, and we couldn't because they canceled it because of the snowstorm, and we just got fucked. Like, they were like, oh, you can take your tickets to a live event in Boston in June. I'm like, I won't be here at that point. Like, it's pointless to me. So I got my money back. But anyway, just the whole thing was just, I don't know, it just was not a great situation. But that's the shit that happens, though. It's not a WWE call. Usually it's the government or them or whoever telling them to cancel their shows because there's a risk of, the disease spreading or whatever. So I don't see any major companies doing that. AEW has already gone about and said, listen, we're going to continue on as scheduled. But that doesn't really mean anything. There's a very good chance that the show gets canceled because even though they want to go on, the city may not feel the same way. The government may not feel the same way. The CDC or whatever may not feel the same way about the situation. I know a lot of other entertainment conventions and tours are getting canceled. Some because of the pressure from the city, others because of just on their own volition. Some like artists and stuff are saying like, "Hey, we're canceling our tour." If that's your prerogative, that's fine. I don't see WWE doing that. I just think it's not in their wheelhouse. WWE, the show must go on. One of their own fucking performers died before the show went live at Over the Edge 1999 with Owen Hart, and they still did the pay-per-view anyway. Nothing will stop these people from putting on a show if they can. If there's no one there, hey, maybe they will do a fucking empty arena match. Who knows? I don't see them doing that for a string of shows like Stardom did. That just seems bizarre to me. I mean, not to say that was a dumb idea, but like Stardom is not WWE. I don't see that happening. I do see the coronavirus being a threat. Regardless of how big or small this thing is, the worry about it is getting to a level now where I've never seen it before. I mean, whether this thing spreads like wildfire or not, the worry about it is completely out of this world. And I'll talk more about actually I'll save my thoughts on the coronavirus for later because other people asked me about it. But no, to answer your question, no, I don't see them doing that. I mean, it's possible. Anything is possible. Either they would outright cancel their tapings like the New Japan company did with the New Japan Cup or whatever, or they would just host it elsewhere. I'm not really sure, but I guess we'll soon see. FD, his second question was, do you feel that Shayna Baszler's utter dominance in a shutout during the Women's Elimination Chamber match last Sunday made the exciting and fun factor of the Elimination Chamber become absolutely pointless in that one match? Do you think that there are any other ways to make Shayna look dominant apart from last Sunday's Chamber match? That's the thing, though. Not every chamber match has to be absolutely exciting and booked a certain way. My thoughts in the match were this. I thought what they did was fucking perfect. Did they need to do the match anyway? Absolutely not. It was a complete waste of a match. There was no need for it. Sheena and Becky sells itself. There's no reason to have an Elimination Chamber match where Baszler earns a title shot. The only purpose that match served after they already announced it was to make Baszler look more dominant than she already was, because there was no chance in hell of any of those other women winning aside from Shayna. So going into that match, I didn't give a fuck about it anyway. My issue with the match was that they had long periods of nothing when Shayna was waiting for the pods to open because she beat the other women too quickly. Having her tap out Liv and Ruby and Sarah within seconds, good, because they're really no threat to Shayna anyway. It's a different story, though, with someone like, Asuka or Natalya. Natalya probably, although I'm not a big fan of her character, she's a lot more credible than, various other people in regards to, Ruby, Sarah, Liv, whatever. She probably should have lasted longer than she did, just so we didn't have like 2 minutes of nothing with Shayna just pacing around waiting for Asuka to come out and then Liv Morgan to come out. Like that got a little repetitive. Or just have her cut a promo. Like that's what Punk did a couple years ago. Maybe not a couple years ago. It was like a decade ago. Punk got rid of R-Truth, and then he was waiting for one of the pods to open, so he just cut a promo in the middle of the chamber. He did the same thing in the Royal Rumble a few years ago too. Not a few years ago. Again, it was that same year, I think. But that's smart. That's a good way of killing time and getting the crowd engaged as opposed to boring them, So with that being said, I didn't mind the match at all. Aside from that, I thought it was perfect in establishing Shayna Baszler as being incredibly dominant and, as being a threat to Becky Lynch. That is how you make a star, in my opinion. That's just me. I know a lot of other people hated the match, terrible main event, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a fuck. I thought it was exactly what it needed to be. What did people expect? Like a full-on instant classic from Ruby Riott and the Riott Squad members going at it with Shayna, Natalya, and Asuka? Honestly, I didn't give a shit to begin with. So just book it to be quick, painless, have Shayna eliminate everyone, and move on. I really did not... I mean, again, aside from the timing issues and the pacing of it, other than that, I thought the match was exactly what it needed to be. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter... Do you think Daniel Bryan should form some catch point-like stable with Drew Gulak and Chad Gable? That would be pretty sick. So for anyone that doesn't know what catch point is, I mean, I wasn't overly familiar either, but I'm pretty sure it was a stable they had in Evolve many years ago with Gulak and Matt Riddle and Kurt Stallion, I want to say. The only reason I know about it is because they referenced it when I think Matt Riddle faced Drew Gulak on that Evolve 10-year anniversary show on the network last year. It was like a wrestling-based stable. NXT tried something similar to that, like the Shooters. Like it was with like Dawkins, Angelo Dawkins, and Jason Jordan and a few others. Maybe Chad Gable, I don't remember. Where they were like legitimate, wrestlers, amateur wrestlers. And it was a cool stable. They never really went forward with it. They did, obviously, with American Alpha, but the other guys kind of got left by the wayside. That being said, though, Gable ain't doing shit right now. It depends what they do with Gulak. Brian Gulak and Gable would be a hell of a stable. The issue is that I can't shit on AEW for having so many stables and then not shit on WWE for doing the exact same thing. It feels like we have a lot of stables right now. The Corbin, Ziggler, Rude thing, the New Day, the Undisputed Era down in NXT, Imperium, Forgotten Sons. On Raw, they have a few stables. Again, it's one thing because they're all on separate brands. I don't know if it's exactly necessary. It wouldn't really help Bryan at all. Because, I think they would have to be heels. Bryan, they cannot turn him heel right now. They just turned him babyface. They need more faces than heels right now in that SmackDown roster. I do like the idea, don't get me wrong. I just think the timing is off. I just don't think now's the right time to do it, because maybe late last year before it went babyface, like that would have been a good time to do it. Gulak just got drafted to SmackDown. Gable wasn't doing shit. That would have been a good time to do it. Maybe Gulak and Gable can form a team. The issue is with Gable is that I really want to see him do something on his own. I feel like he's always relegated to the tag team ranks. Just do something with the guy on his own. He's so fucking good. Don't waste him anymore. Not this Shorty G bullshit either. Gulak, kind of the same thing up until recently. Before he faced Bryan at the pay-per-view, the guy was doing jack shit on Friday nights. He was never even on the show to begin with, but he was doing the PowerPoint things last year. He was doing the PowerPoint presentations, blah, blah, blah. No one gave a shit. So I like the idea of the stable. Depends how they would go about booking it. I just don't think right now is the right time to do it, because SmackDown has a decent amount of tag teams already. They don't need more tag teams. They don't need another stable. Bryan does not need to go heel. So I just don't think now is the right time. At the Wrestle Guy, Sal from Twitter, his question was, how do you believe the coronavirus will affect WrestleMania weekend? I know it won't be canceled, but do you think this affects any of the Mania weekend events? So I've talked about this for the last couple weeks here on Hashtag, and on Wrestle Rant Radio, I talked about it last week, about how I would be shocked. And I still would be shocked if they canceled WrestleMania because of the coronavirus. Well, first of all, it's not their choice. Vince, it doesn't matter what the case or what the scenario may be. He will run the show regardless. The show must go on is like tattooed on the inside of his fucking forehead. He's not going to cancel the show. But the city of Tampa could cancel the show. I guess they're meeting later this week, maybe on Thursday or Friday or so. The officials of the city of Tampa are meeting to determine what the future holds for any entertainment events coming up in the city of Tampa. Now, I know there was at least one person who came in contact with the coronavirus, has the coronavirus in Tampa. That's one person. I don't know if it's spread. At the last check, I don't know. I haven't looked it up. But that may be a cause for concern. And as I said, I was going to say earlier during FD's second question, that I think, first of all, the coronavirus should not be taken lightly. I've said before that I said last week, I just don't think it's as big of a deal as the media is making it out to be. Yeah, there are a lot of people catching it. There's like 100 cases in New York. How many people live in New York, though? I'm not saying that it's a joke or that it's not serious, because it absolutely is serious. First of all, wash your fucking hands. Like, shouldn't that already be a thing? The flu is terrible. People are saying it's worse than the flu. It's not as bad as the flu. I'm not really sure what to believe here. I saw it as the swine flu. That was my interpretation of it. That's what my last thought process was in the whole thing, that the swine flu was just as bad, if not worse, 10 years ago. It wasn't as bad media-wise because social media, I don't think at that point in late 2009, early 2010, was as prominent as it is today when you have people tweeting about it and sharing articles about it on Facebook and whatnot. It was a totally different time. And that was pretty bad too. I got sick with it. Everyone I knew at school got sick with it. It was pretty bad. And I'm sure a lot of people died from that too. But I think the panic is worse than the actual disease. And I read this somewhere, and I agree. It's really not about the disease killing off civilization. It's more about the disease getting to those that would be affected the most by it, people that would be vulnerable, people that are already sick, older, young, whatever. Not young, but like babies and stuff like that. Those people can't handle it as much because their immune systems aren't as strong. So that's what we should really be worried about, not the fact that it would spread to everyone here in the country. And, just because someone has it doesn't mean they're going to die. Like, I know there's no cure, I don't think, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if it's any worse than the actual flu symptom-wise. It sounds like it's a lot like the flu or like the swine flu. I had that, and it was pretty bad, but I think that was the last time I was really, really sick. I get sick at least once a year. I never got that sick ever since, and that was over a decade ago. I've never really had the flu before, aside from that. It was a different kind of flu. It was a different strand of the flu. But anyway, though, could it be canceled? Honestly, I'm not putting it past the city of Tampa to cancel. I think there's not a very good chance, but there is a decent chance that WrestleMania could be either moved or postponed. Or, how postponed are we talking here, though? Like, when I hear postponed, I don't think the next week, because I've seen like South by Southwest or whatever that convention was. They canceled that thing outright. E3, I heard there was concern about it being canceled this year. Some events are being postponed months, not a couple of weeks, months, because this thing is so bad right now. They expect it to be getting worse. I guess it's going to get worse before it gets better. Again, I've seen a lot of schools. My brothers are still in college, and their schools, their schedules are getting canceled. Their classes are getting postponed for weeks. One of my brothers doesn't go back until April, basically. It's fucking March 11th. It doesn't go back until March 30th. They have spring break coming up, but they've already canceled that entire week of classes for the week after spring break. Because, and that's New York, so it's a different story, and there's about 100 cases of it, I think, over there right now. So, I don't know. I think it's, for them to be canceling events, then again, they're taking proper precautions, so I understand what they're going for, why they're doing it, blah, blah, blah. The thing is that it's not like, I don't know. It's really hard to explain. I'm not saying, again, it's a joke or that it's not as bad as they're making it out to be. Maybe media-wise it is. It's not as bad as it actually is. Because it's not like entire... the thing is that, like, Italy has it way worse right now. And it could get even worse over here in the U.S. So far, we're not at that point. So for them to be canceling all these conventions and events and whatever, I think it's premature until we know that it gets worse. But I guess they're just seeing ahead and they're taking the proper precautions. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it is what it is. So I guess we'll find out in a few days what happens to WrestleMania. And if that happens, I have no idea what the fuck they would do. They're not canceling WrestleMania. It's not going to happen. It's still going to happen, but it's just going to happen somewhere else. Somewhere whatever city would, I don't know what they would do. Would they tell people like, hey, move your tickets to here, they're still good? I have no idea. I have no clue. They're not going to host it at the Performance Center, I'll tell you that much. So I'm not really sure what they're going to do. But it's going to be interesting nonetheless. I honestly don't know. Last week I could tell you, not with certainty, but pretty close, that they're not canceling WrestleMania. That's a joke. But after everything I've heard this past week, of everything being delayed and canceled, like, this is way serious than the flu and other stuff in terms of, like, the hype surrounding it, and not the good kind of hype, that I just think that WrestleMania could be in jeopardy. I guess we'll find out very, very soon, but I am worried. Not about, like, getting it or anything like that. Again, it's more so if you're really, really old or already sick or really, really young. Getting it is not going to kill you. No one wants to get the coronavirus, obviously. But, like, it's more about how it affects other stuff at this point that I'm kind of, concerned about. Because there's a lot of stuff, schools shutting down. A lot of countries are like, people are in houses all day long for days on end until this thing kind of, until they figure it out. Italy is just in shreds right now, I guess. I don't know anyone that lives in Italy, so I can't really verify that, firsthand. But I've read a lot of stories about how Italy's like on lockdown essentially right now. Like, that's not good. So we'll soon see, but how would it affect the WrestleMania weekend events? I don't know. Would they cancel it outright? I I don't know. I cannot answer that. I think they would just have to cancel it. All the indie shows are, sorry, the fucking cancel, but WrestleMania ain't getting canceled. They're going to either move it somewhere else or figure something out. Trust me, we're still getting Roman Reigns versus Goldberg for that Universal Championship. Don't you deny that for a fucking second. We're still getting your favorite match on the card of Roman versus Goldberg at WrestleMania, so no need to worry there. Anyway, next question comes from @TimeBombZone on Twitter. With Jeff Hardy returning to SmackDown, do you see him having a match at WrestleMania, and with who? I mean, he must be. I said this either last week or some other time recently that I just did not see him coming back before Mania, because what do you do with the guy? I mean, I think going to SmackDown is the right move. I really do think SmackDown is the right home for Jeff Hardy. That's kind of where he became a star on his own about 10 years ago or so before he left the company in 2009. Raw is set right now with star power, people they're focusing on. I think SmackDown needs him way more than Raw does. But I would have brought him back after WrestleMania. Well, first of all, I would have had his return be a surprise. Announcing it in advance, yeah, it gets people to look forward to the show, but I'm not a big fan of that. I just think it makes for a better moment if you have Hardy show up and it's like, oh, it's a must-see show now. Like, anything can happen on SmackDown. If you announce it outright, it's not as exciting. But anyway, he must be involved. I feel like at this point, they might be doing some sort of like multi-man match for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. I would think they're going to be doing Braun and Zayn one-on-one, which does absolutely nothing for me because we know Zayn's going to get squashed by Braun. Who gives a fuck? I think it's more likely we get some sort of multi-man match at this point. I thought we were getting Strowman and Sheamus. Unfortunately, it does not look like they're going in that direction. But maybe we get Strowman, Zayn, Nakamura, Jeff, Bryan. Did I say Sheamus already? Sheamus, Bryan, Ali maybe. There's a couple different people you can throw in that picture. I mean, I hate the fucking multi-man matches. I really do when you have a set match that you can do, such as Strowman versus Sheamus. Otherwise, like, okay, I get it. In this case, it really should have been a one-on-one match. There's no need to do a random multi-man match just to get everyone on the card. Hardy, they could have waited to bring back until after Mania, a lot like they did a few years ago. But whatever. So I don't really see him having a singles match at WrestleMania. It would be cool if he did. I just don't see that happening. So I see it probably being some sort of multi-man match or the Intercontinental Championship, and that's where Hardy will end up. @Iwagu91 from Twitter, considering that AJ Styles broke kayfabe in a major way by referring to Undertaker by his real name and becoming the first to bring up his marriage to Michelle McCool, could this year truly be Taker's last hurrah, or will he still keep going? He's going to still keep going. I've given up hope. I mean, AJ Styles brought it up in his promo. It's like, oh, he broke the streak, or the streak was over, and we all thought that was it, and it wasn't. It's like, okay. And I wanted to see him come back at that point. I thought the streak match would have been a terrible way for him to go out. Not just because he broke, the streak was broken, but because the match absolutely sucked. And then he had the match with Roman, where he went out and it looked like he was done. And AJ said as much. We all thought that was it for Taker, and then he came back anyway. The guy is really tarnishing his legacy at this point. And I hate to say it, I'm a big Taker fan. I met the guy on Saturday. He's a very nice guy. In the ring, though, the guy has got to hang it up. This has got to be it. It won't be. I doubt it will be. I would love for AJ to win. I don't think he will. I mean, again, it sounds silly, but people might be wondering, why would you pick Taker over AJ? Because I see all the other younger guys going over at other parts in the card. Now, we did have 3 baby faces win 3 major championship matches at Mania last year, so they could do it if they wanted to, and they should. But if Roman's beating Goldberg, Wyatt's beating John Cena, and Drew is beating Brock, hopefully, that tells me they're going to have at least one legend go over, that being The Undertaker, because AJ can absorb the loss. That doesn't mean he should lose, though. He already lost the Tokai Trophy, whatever the fuck it was, at Super Showdown. He already lost to Aleister Black at Elimination Chamber. The guy needs a big win. He should not lose at WrestleMania to a 50-something-year-old man that is well past his prime. But he probably will anyway, because it's WWE. But I thought the promo was great. I mean, this is a nice way of getting people invested in the match. Shooting and using real names isn't always my cup of tea, but we've never seen this with Taker before. They've never acknowledged his marriage to Michelle McCool. I'm not really sure what that matters in this case, but it's interesting if nothing else. It's better than like, oh, you cost me the trophy, now time to face you at WrestleMania. AJ and Taker is a match that should have happened years ago, but better late than never if AJ wins. I just don't think he will. But to answer your question, no, I do not think this is it for Taker. And honestly, I think You can have him lose here. I'm not saying if this isn't it for him, he should still win. He should win. He shouldn't. What I would do, as many other people have brought up, that this year at Survivor Series marks 30 years to the day that the guy debuted in WWE. To the day, 30 years. That's amazing. They did the same thing 5 years ago for his 25th anniversary as well. And that should have been it, but wasn't. So do something similar this year with Taker at Survivor Series. Have that be it. And then ride off into the sunset. That's what I would do. Again, I don't see that happening. I think the Taker Black OC match would have been better. Because what I would have done this. You have Taker and Aleister Black beat the OC at WrestleMania. Because then it's not a singles win. It's not a big deal if the OC loses. You could have fucking Carl Anderson get pinned if you want. It's not that big of a deal. But you can still keep the Taker-AJ feud going, wrap it up at Survivor Series. Like, take time off from it, obviously. Taker's not going to be around likely until then. But Taker comes back for Survivor Series. And then that's where you have AJ beat Taker and have that be it. And then he rides off into the sunset, and that's it for The Undertaker in WWE. Will that happen? Absolutely not. But that's what I would have liked to have seen happen. Because you give him a win at WrestleMania, he doesn't have to lose for a third time at Mania, which is ridiculous for a guy that went like 21-0. But then you can also have AJ beat him on his 30 exact year anniversary. Again, they've already, screwed the pooch on that one. They've already announced AJ and Taker flat out. But that's what I would have done. His next couple of questions included, before it was announced who would compete inside the match beyond, wouldn't it have been cool if Jon Moxley and Darby Allin were in the match? 2, do you think that the match beyond will have a roof? And 3, your thoughts on the match itself happening on AEW and on TV. Yes, I think Moxley and Allin should have been in it because Moxley is feuding with Jericho anyway. The Elite versus Inner Circle is a cleaner match because it's two set teams and they've kind of been feuding since the beginning of AEW. The issue is that the Bucks have been, I don't know, the thing is, the Bucks are feuding with Omega and Page the last time that we saw them. Cody has nothing to do with this at all. The Elite, or rather the Inner Circle, are feuding with no one in that match. Hager's feuding with Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes ain't in the match. Santana and Ortiz aren't really feuding with anyone outside of maybe the Jurassic Express. They're not in here. Guevara is feuding with Allin. He's not in the match. And Moxley's not in the match either to feud with Jericho. So it's kind of a weird matchup. But yeah, I would have preferred if Moxley and Allin were in the match to make it make more sense and not just a match for the sake of having a match. But I'm sure it'll be a great match regardless. The second part of your question in regards to will it have a roof, I mean, we'll find out tonight because they are revealing the rules for the match tonight on Dynamite. I think it will. War Games didn't it? Like, if it doesn't have a roof, that's basically just a steel cage match. So yeah, I assume it will have a roof. And then my thoughts on it happening on Dynamite and not on like pay-per-view or something. I mean, I'm not a real big fan of just throwing the match out there for no real reason. Again, the Elite aren't really feuding right now with the Inner Circle, and it's really just a way to bring more people in for that show, sell more tickets, and make it a big attraction, pop a rating, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't piss me off, but I think ideally it would be better if they brought it in when it actually mattered and it was needed and, save it for a big pay-per-view. It doesn't really bother me that they're doing it on Dynamite, but it is a cool gimmick. It's a cool concept. But the issue is that there's really no reason for it. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. So that's really my biggest problem with the match. Maybe they'll make it a great match and I'll forget all about it, but yeah, it is a little weird they're doing it on TV, and not just the fact that they're doing it on TV, but the fact that there's no reason for it right now. It's not even like, save it for Double or Nothing. There's no reason to do it there either. There's no reason to do it right now at all. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the YouTube Machine. Awesome content as always. Check out his channel, Real Honesty with John Ritland. But his first question was here. So Jeff Hardy is returning to SmackDown this week, and Ricochet has apparently been frustrated with how he's been used on Raw lately. Could WWE kill two birds with one stone and team them up? 20-plus year veteran with someone that newer fans could gravitate towards. Or someone newer that the fans could gravitate towards. I like that idea a lot. Ricochet would have to go to SmackDown in that case, and Hardy's already going back. Is already returning to SmackDown. Ricochet's on Raw. So I'm not really sure how you would explain why Ricochet's on SmackDown. Hardy should not go to Raw. Again, SmackDown's already kind of set with tag teams. I think Raw would need more tag teams than SmackDown does right now, in my opinion. So Hardy and Ricochet might be better off on Raw, though I think Hardy Here's the pros and the cons of that. Yes, I think it helps Ricochet a lot. I never really thought about the idea of them facing each other or teaming with each other or whatever. I think that's really cool. The con of it is that I've already seen enough of Hardy in the tag team. We already saw him team up with Matt, do that whole thing, chase the tag titles, win the tag team titles. Hardy probably still wants to go out and do his own thing. He was United States champion a couple years ago. I get it. And whatever. And he already kind of had a singles run from 2018 to 2019. But there's still so much more you can do with the guy. Hardy and Ricochet, I feel like, is a very short-lived thing, and maybe it is a short-lived thing, a lot like Y2AJ, where you team them up, and then Ricochet goes heel on Hardy, and boom, there you go. A Ricochet versus Jeff Hardy feud could be a lot of fun. So that would be what I would do. The issue is that you have to get Ricochet on SmackDown. It wouldn't happen anytime soon. It would probably have to happen after WrestleMania if we have another shakeup, which I do not think we need right now. I said that last week, but I do not think we need another shakeup anytime soon. But that's how I would book it. If Ricochet somehow got over to SmackDown, maybe he says his contract expired on Raw, a la Jack Swagger all those years ago, which they went on to do absolutely nothing with the guy on SmackDown. So I'm not really sure why they did that in retrospect, aside from just feeding him to Baron Corbin. But anyway, I think a Hardy Ricochet team and the subsequent feud could work if you turn Ricochet heel, but you got to get Ricochet on SmackDown, and right now they're separated by the brand split. His second question, what would be the worst outcome for WrestleMania 36? Becky Lynch beating Shayna Baszler or Brock Lesnar beating Drew McIntyre? In my opinion, it's got to be Brock beating Drew. I just think if Brock beats Drew, it wastes any momentum, all momentum that McIntyre has right now. The guy is hot. People are getting behind him. He has momentum on his side. Why would you ruin that by having him get beaten by Brock? I know Seth beat him last year, so I am kind of worried that people are like, Drew's absolutely going to win. Not really. It's not set in stone. People said the same thing about Roman beating Brock a couple of years ago at Mania, and Brock won clean. So I would not count out that possibility whatsoever of Brock beating Drew McIntyre. Becky beating Shayna, my thought process on that is this. Shayna should not lose. She has to win after that performance at Elimination Chamber. And I was thinking more about this before that happened. But if Becky were to win, it's a dumb booking decision. But if it's the catalyst to turn her heel, then I'm okay with it. And then maybe Shayna wins afterward. Like, Shayna, lest we forget, she failed in her first opportunity, the NXT Women's Championship 2 years ago. She lost to Ember Moon after being built up to look like a threat. She lost by the skin of her teeth, but she still lost. And then she bounced back, won the championship over Mania weekend, and everyone forgot it happened. Granted, this is a WrestleMania. It's not a random takeover in Philadelphia. But I think the only way Becky wins is if they turn her heel afterward. Because I think there would be a lot of heat on Becky for beating Shayna, because people want Shayna to win, I think. So I think Brock beating Drew is way worse, because that literally serves no purpose. That is just fucking dumb. I don't want to see Brock as champion any longer. Drew, it's his time. He's hot right now. Don't have him get beat here and then win it at SummerSlam or the next night or at the next pay-per-view. That serves no purpose. He has to win it here. He has to. So I think Brock beating Drew is way worse than Becky beating Shayna. At noob_n_code 1991, what are your thoughts on Jeff Hardy and Paige returning to SmackDown this week, and what will be their reasons? I already talked about Hardy. Paige, we've already found out that she's going to be confronting Bayley on Friday. Why? I have no idea. Probably just to announce that six-pack challenge for WrestleMania that I've been hearing a lot about over the last week with Lacey and, who is it? Lacey, Naomi, Sasha, Bayley. Who's the fifth one? Carmella? I don't know. Who gives a shit? It really should be Bayley and Sasha straight up at this point. They already soured me on Bayley versus Naomi. It should be Bayley versus Sasha. They want more time to tell a match. The rumor I read from, I think it was Alex McCarthy from TalkSport, who's a usually pretty good source. He's usually very credible when it comes to this type of stuff, so I'm not saying he's lying. So assuming this is a correct, accurate report, that Bayley and Sasha would prefer a different show to have their match on, because it wouldn't be buried and lost in the shuffle in the card, as it probably would be, and I get that. And they want more time to tell their story. How much more fucking time do you need? It's been 5 years, dude. 5 years. I read that and I fucking laughed. I'm like, they want more time to tell their story? People have been waiting to see this at WrestleMania for years. For fucking years. What, you want to have it happen at Extreme Rules the next month? No one will remember it. No one will give a shit. It doesn't matter. It should happen at WrestleMania. It's a WrestleMania-worthy match. And part of me thinks it's bullshit just because why would they pass up the opportunity to have their match from NXT on a WrestleMania-like stage? Not even a WrestleMania-like stage. It's fucking WrestleMania. That's why I thought that was a bullshit report. And if it is true, that's incredibly dumb. They would rather have a six-pack challenge that's going to get 2 minutes of WrestleMania than a match that might actually be very good on the undercard. Charlotte and Asuka, did they worry about getting 5 minutes? No, they went out there and had a great match at WrestleMania 34. I'm not saying Bayley and Sasha would get 20 minutes. And yeah, it's a little bit of an abrupt of a story, but you can tell the story that Sasha's not happy with Bayley's actions lately and how she's been losing a lot in non-title matches. It just makes way more sense than doing a fucking six-pack challenge. Who gives a fuck? Yeah, it gets Naomi and Lacey off the pre-show, but does anyone really care? Naomi should have been in the spot to begin with, and it really should be Bayley versus Naomi. But they screwed the pooch by doing it at the Super Showdown show, and the next night on SmackDown. That was stupid. So again, I know that's a whole other rant there, but I just thought that was fucking dumb when I read that. Jeff Hardy, I don't know why he's coming back right now. It's cool that all these people will be a part of WrestleMania, but would you rather... I mean, this depends on the performer, obviously. Personally, I would rather come back after Mania. Again, I'm not a WWE superstar. I mean, I'm sure everyone wants that WrestleMania paycheck. I can't imagine it's that big for being on the fucking pre-show. But anyway, I think it would be better to bring a lot of these people back after Mania, where the spotlight will solely be on them, as opposed to before Mania, where they get lost in the shuffle, go on to do nothing, and then no one gives a shit. Like when the Hardy Boys came back last year, it was in like late February maybe. They were on the kickoff show at WrestleMania in the fucking Battle Royal. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. That annoyed me so much because they came back with a lot of momentum. People wanted to see the Usos versus the Hardys, and they gave us some random tag team title match instead that the Hardys weren't even a part of. And they were on the kickoff show instead. Get the fuck out of here. So Hardy, I really would have waited to bring him back until after WrestleMania. If they have a great idea in mind, then awesome. Awesome, I say. But if not, then I think that's a mistake. The Paige thing, I have absolutely no idea. I am intrigued. I like Paige as an on-air character, so we'll see what she has in mind. And it's cool they're advertising it, but at the same time, I think it would have been a lot cooler if all these people just came back and they didn't advertise it in advance. Because I think that shock factor is a lot better than like, oh, watch SmackDown, Hardy's on this week. I think it's a lot better if you have that must-see feel like, oh, anything can happen. Jeff Hardy showed up. Paige showed up. What can happen next? When they had that one episode like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, when the Usos showed up, Sheamus, John Morrison, they all showed up at random. That was cool. That made me want to watch SmackDown. But when you announce it in advance, it's like, oh, okay, like cool, like whatever. So we'll see. I don't really know what the reasons are, and I can't even venture a guess. But I do imagine, obviously, it is WrestleMania related. At Scarlet1 from Twitter, best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars at number 21. Best from NXT and Dynamite last week, I really liked Velveteen Dream versus Roderick Strong in the steel cage match. I thought Tegan Nox versus Dakota Kai was a great match as well. I didn't like the fact that there were 2 steel cage matches on the show last week, but whatever. The Johnny Gargano interview I thought was really, really good with Mauro Ranallo from Dynamite, which I also thought was an equally entertaining show. The main event of Jericho and Guevara versus Darby Allin in the 2-on-1 handicap match I thought was awesome. The Jake Roberts return was really, really cool. Very interested to see who his client is. Jon Moxley, his promo to kick off the show I thought was very passionate, intense, great stuff. There really wasn't a lot of worst, so to speak, from the 2 shows. The only 2 things I would say were the weaker aspects of both episodes were the Chelsea Green versus Shotzi Blackheart match. Not really that great of a match at all, but it served its purpose. Got Chelsea Green in the ladder match over TakeOver weekend, so whatever. Jake Hager versus QT Marshall from Dynamite. I mean, it was a simple squash for Hager, just not all that exciting. I don't really give a shit about QT Marshall personally, but that was probably the quote-unquote weakest part of Dynamite last week. Best and worst of AEW Revolution and WWE Elimination Chamber. Best first from Revolution. I already kind of talked about this last week, but Kenny Omega and Adam Page versus the Young Bucks. Amazing match. Easily the best match of either of those 2 shows by a long shot. Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara. Very good match. The Jericho Moxley match was great in the main event. The title change was great. Pac and Orange Cassidy was very good. From Elimination Chamber, I thought Humberto and Andrade was good. I wouldn't put it in the best category, but it was still good. Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak was easily the best thing on that entire show. Not even close. And the Tag Team Elimination Chamber was not an all-time classic, but I enjoyed it for what it was. The worst... The thing is with Chamber, there really wasn't a lot of bad, but there wasn't a lot of great either. It was one of those middle-of-the-road shows. The weakest match in the entire show, in my opinion, aside from the Viking Raiders versus Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins kickoff match, was the 3-on-1 handicap match with Braun facing Shinsuke, Sammy, and Cesaro. I thought that was kind of like mediocre, didn't really care. That was easily the weakest match from that show. And then from Revolution, the Jake Hager-Dustin Rhodes match, as I talked about last week, a weak opener in my opinion, and the Nyla Rose versus Chris Statlander I thought was no good at all. Did you hear about promotions like New Japan Pro Wrestling continuing to cancel events due to the coronavirus? I already talked about the coronavirus earlier, but yeah, New Japan canceled like all of their events for the month of March. And I just got done reading, I think I said it earlier, but now it's been confirmed that E3 has officially been canceled for 2020, and that's in June. They're canceling events 3 months out. Now, I think that's a little extreme. I mean, they may have been facing pressure, but it's in 3 months from now. Do we know this thing is going to be around in 3 months? Will it be worse 3 months from now? I think that's a little extreme, to be honest with you. But with New Japan, it's way worse over there. It's way worse on that side of the world, so I do not blame them at all for canceling those events. I'm not surprised at all. I think the Cup isn't even happening at this point. Like, they only canceled the first half. The second half, maybe they could catch up and do other matches or whatever. No, they just canceled all of them for the month of March. So that's not good. Imagine if this was like 2 or 3 months ago and they canceled Wrestle Kingdom. That would really suck, because that's continuously the best pay-per-view, wrestling pay-per-view of the year every single year. And that would not have been good. So hopefully this is, done long before Wrestle Kingdom 2021. But if they're canceling events 3 months out for June of 2020... you never know. This is it's been pretty bad. The next question from Scarlet One, their final question here. Did you hear about Scott Steiner being hospitalized after the Impact tapings? I did. Very scary stuff, according to Sean Rossett from Fightful.com. His initial tweet on the situation was very scary. He was like, this is a very bad situation. I forgot what it said exactly, but it was not exactly encouraging. He said, this is very... very serious, way more serious than we initially anticipated. Like, they thought, maybe not that he would die, but it was a very, very uncertain, uneasy little while there when they didn't know what was going on with Scott Steiner. Thankfully, he's in the hospital. He's on the road to recovery. I think he had a emergency heart surgery on Saturday or Sunday, on Saturday, or late Friday night, whatever. So that's not good, but, thoughts and prayers are with Scott Steiner, big fan of his. Sucks to see him in such bad shape in regards to this whole health scare, but hopefully he's on the road to recovery and he's back before we know it. I mean, there's no real reason for Scott Steiner to be wrestling regularly in 2020. Keep that in mind. But that being said, though, hopefully he is back to full health very sooner rather than later. The guy's great. At RJ_Marceau with the final question of the day. His question was, do you think AEW has made more tag team / factions to have more wrestlers on the shows, even if they aren't wrestling on that particular show? For example, Pac wrestles on Dynamite, but accompanied by the Lucha Bros would get them more exposure on TV. Cody doesn't wrestle, but comes out to save the Elite guys, which gets him on TV weekly. Yeah, I'm sure that's a thought. I don't think they do that on purpose. I think they just like factions. The Young Bucks have that mindset of New Japan where like more factions is a good thing. I don't like it there. I don't like it in AEW. The Pac, the Death Triangle, as you call it, as they have referred to it so far, with Pac and then the Lucha Bros, Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix. I mean, it's a great stable on paper. I just don't think it was necessary. There really was no reason to have a stable of those three. It just kind of came out of nowhere, to be honest. Never really explained it either. But I think the thought process is, yeah, it gets people on TV more. The Lucha Bros have barely been on TV as far as I've seen in recent weeks, recent months. So this gets them back on TV in a regular role. I don't love the idea just because it feels a lot like, to me, like WrestleMania. Like, oh, we got to get everyone on the card. But this is like every week, so it's even worse. Just do a better job of cycling people in or out. And so far, AEW has done a pretty good job of that. Featuring people not every week and only when it matters most and not overexposing people. So far, they've done a good job of that. But personally, I'm not a big fan of all the factions, but that's just me. The death triangle is super random. It has potential. It could be awesome. But it's very just out of left field. So I do think that is part of the mindset. I didn't really think about that, but I'm sure part of the mindset is, hey, if we have more factions, it gets these people on TV more consistently. So you're not wrong about that whatsoever. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 328 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, March 10th, 2020. Thank you, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. I'm about to record episode 329 for next week, so keep an eye out for that next Wednesday right here on the channel. Thank you again for sending in as many questions as you did. If you did not hear your question answered on today's show, it's probably because I'm including it in next week's episode, so stay tuned for that. As far as this episode is concerned, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. And that's about it, guys. So stay safe out there with this coronavirus bullshit going around. Wash your fucking hands, first and foremost. And we'll be right back here on #AskGSM for episode 329 next Wednesday. Until then, guys, I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.